Hey, what's up guys, it's Thunderstruck115, and today we are going to be taking a look at somebody shitting on the campaign for Halo Combat Evolved. Now, I just want to say that if you don't like Halo CE's campaign, there's nothing wrong with that, but the logic and reasoning here is pretty fucking stupid, to be honest. Because what this video boils down to is him debunking quote-unquote excuses that people make for Halo CE, but it really just amounts to a whole bunch of fucking straw manning. And I will explain why that is the case later. Now, I should note that this video we're looking at is on the older side. It's over a year old at the time of me recording this, but it just popped into my recommended now, and I thought it'd be fun to make fun of it. So anyways, let's go ahead and get right into this shit.
Halo CE is one of the most beloved shooters ever made, but I have never enjoyed it personally. I find Halo 2, 3, and Reach to have much better campaigns. I'd even take Halo 4 over Halo CE easily, although I seem to have a love-hate relationship with the former in that case. The only Halo campaign I think is arguably worse than Halo CE is Halo Infinite, and maybe I'll make a video detailing all the reasons I despise Infinite at some point, but that's a topic for another day.
I think it speaks volumes when this dude puts Halo CE's campaign under Halo 5's campaign. Like, I genuinely have no idea how anyone likes that shit.
Anyway, I've grown very tired of hearing excuses for Halo CE's flaws, and I want to quickly address 4 of the ones I hear most, so let's get right into it. Excuse number 1. But it's an old game. You can't judge an older game by modern standards. Guys, I don't care how old the game is. The game stands or falls on its own merits regardless of how old it is.
While I don't disagree with your statement that the game's age isn't a shield for criticism, at the same time, who the fuck is out here saying that you can't criticize Halo CE because of its age? Like, it would honestly help your case if you would actually show the people that are making this claim, that way we can see exactly what it is they're saying. More likely, it's just people saying that the age should be considered when judging the game like this when it comes to certain aspects. And even then, the only thing I can really think of that would apply to would be the graphics and the jank-ass vehicle physics. The former of which isn't really a fair criticism, and the latter of which is something that Halo CE is heavily criticized for. Or at least it's agreed upon that future games did it much better.
You can't use the age of a game as an excuse to dismiss fundamental issues such as rampant copy-paste level design. It was definitely within Bungie's capabilities to tone down this repetitive design in 2001. But they chose not to and instead decided to pad the game out by artificially extending the length of just about every single level. All the developers needed to do to get rid of this problem was not reuse entire buildings 10 times in every mission.
Holy shit, the fucking straw manning here is insane. First of all, the issues with Halo CE's level design has nothing to do with its age. Rather, it had to do with its rushed development. Second of all, who the fuck is out here running excuses for Halo CE's level design? If anything, the number one criticism that I see levied at Halo CE's campaign from the community is the repetitive nature of the level design. So again, could you please show examples of these people that are running these excuses? Because it just sounds to me like you're pulling this shit straight out of your ass.
Why is that such a difficult idea for people to understand? Also, if Halo CE gets a pass for all its issues because it's an older game, why don't Halo 2 and 3 get the same treatment?
They do get the same treatment as Halo CE. That being, it's just as subject to criticism as any other game in the franchise. Again, who the fuck is out here saying that you can't criticize Halo CE because of its age? I'm genuinely curious.
Because they're sequels? So what?
Well, you see, the thing with sequels is that they're supposed to improve upon the previous game, so if they don't do that, then naturally that's gonna be a fucking problem. Meanwhile, there's nothing to compare the first game in the series to until a sequel releases, so the bar for the series wouldn't have been set yet. But even then, that doesn't mean that the initial game in the series is immune to criticism.
Halo 3 is 15 years old and Halo 2 is 18 years old. At what point does a game become old enough that all of its issues should just be dismissed because it's an older game? This idea has always been asinine to me because Halo CE's die-hard fans want to claim the campaign as a classic that stands the test of time and is better than every other campaign in the series. But then when people criticize the game, those fans just say, well, it's an older game, so you don't get to judge it. What? Something has to stand up over time to be considered a classic because that's literally the fucking definition of what a classic is.
Holy shit, I don't even think you could find this level of strawmanning in a Jim Sterling video. First of all, I really don't know who the fuck is out here saying that Halo CE is better than every other Halo campaign in its entirety. Like, the only thing that I see people say that Halo CE does better than any of the other games would be the difficulty balancing on Legendary difficulty. And in that case, I would agree. But in pretty much every other aspect, when it comes to things like the weapon sandbox, the enemy sandbox, the level design, the story, you know, I'll often see people point towards games like Halo 3 or Halo Reach or ODST as being better. But as for it being a classic that stands the test of time, that's because overall its game design does hold up. Sure, there are flaws you can pick apart, shit like the repetitive level design, the jank-ass physics, or the rocket launcher flood, but overall it is still a really good game that holds up even 23 years later. But so far you have not listed any reason for why this game doesn't hold up with the exception of the level design. And even then, the level design isn't bad in the way that it just doesn't complement the combat loop. It's just repetitive because it keeps copy and pasting the same rooms and corridors throughout the level. A definite flaw, yes, but nothing game-breaking. But besides that, anything else?
Our understanding of the world around us improves with each passing day, and video games are obviously not excluded from that. And I'm not saying the age of a game shouldn't be considered in any capacity when evaluating its quality. I wouldn't criticize an NES game for having long load times because the technology for the faster load times we see in more modern games didn't exist at the time.
Okay, I know this is off topic, but what fucking NES game has these long-ass load times? I am genuinely curious. If anything, I find that they usually load a lot faster than modern games.
So that wouldn't be a fair assessment. But guys, there's a reason why we drive around in cars instead of horse-drawn carriages. There's a reason why we use calculators to do complex math instead of using slide rulers. The modern methods are more efficient and they do the job better than the older methods do, so the older methods were phased out. Likewise, there's a reason why every modern game isn't designed like that one game from 2001 that you're convinced is the best game in the universe. Modern games use methods that are more efficient and are objectively better than older games in many ways as a result.
And with the exception of the level design, you never fucking explain how.
It's not a matter of a video game being good and then magically becoming bad at a later date. It's about gaining a better understanding of what good design actually is and then reassessing previous opinions and viewpoints based on that. It's okay to form an opinion and then change it later. You don't have to stick to one perspective on every issue for your entire life. The fact that Halo CE's campaign was viewed as revolutionary in 2001 doesn't mean it's not okay for someone to look back at it later and say, you know what, this isn't really as good as I previously thought. That's called growing as a person and getting smarter as you learn new information. Excuse number 2. Yes, the story is simple, but video games don't need complex stories to be good.
I detect nothing but facts in that statement.
First of all, I 100% agree that a video game doesn't need a complex story to be good. To pick an example, Ori and the Blind Forest is a great example of an amazing game that doesn't have a complex story at all. The story is given to you in small tidbits that are just enough to make sure it stays in the back of your mind to give you good food for thought, and this does work for some games.
And this is literally the exact same approach Halo CE uses. Every single mission, you are given a specific goal that you need to achieve. This contextualizes the gameplay and gives you a clear reason as to why you're slaughtering aliens.
However, it doesn't work for every game. If you're going to take the less is more approach with your story, then you need to have a gameplay loop that isn't heavily reliant on the story to be immersive. Otherwise, the story's lack of complexity will stick out like a sore thumb. In the case of Ori, I can enjoy the gameplay and not be annoyed by the simplistic narrative because it never feels like I'm doing something for no reason. There's always a goal in mind that motivates me to push forward, and I'm not constantly thinking, why hasn't X thing been explained more?
And again, I could literally say the exact same thing about Halo Combat Evolved. Everything that the game has you do in-game has an explanation for it. Mission 1, you gotta escape the Pillar of Autumn with Cortana so that the Covenant doesn't get access to the data she holds. Mission 2, you just crash-landed on the Halo ring so you need to link up with everybody else so you can actually have a chance to fight against the Covenant. Mission 3, you gotta rescue Captain Keyes, from whom you'll learn that Halo is a weapon, so Mission 4, you follow the Covenant to find the map room that points to Halo's control center. Mission 5, if you lead an assault on the control room. The only way you could try to argue otherwise is if you genuinely were not paying attention.
On the other hand, Halo CE substitutes a proper story with vague lore that requires too many mental gymnastics to be interesting on its own.
I feel like a broken record at this point, but do you have any examples of this? The only one I could kind of think of is why the humans and the Covenant are at war in the first place, but even then, that fact is quite irrelevant to the plot of Halo CE. But everything that is relevant to the plot is explained. You could say the story starts in media res, but the intro cutscene makes it clear that the Pillar of Autumn just made a blind jump away from the planet Reach, which the Covenant just destroyed. Meanwhile, the significance of other plot points, such as the Halo ring itself or the Flood, is revealed when it's relevant. I mean, sure, not every single aspect of Halo's lore is particularly deep at this point, but it's the first fucking game in the series. Naturally, it's not going to reveal everything about its universe right from the get-go, but it does reveal everything that's directly relevant to the plot at hand.
Having an 8-hour gameplay loop of nothing but shooting nameless, faceless aliens gets really old when you finish a mission that took you nearly an hour and you feel like you accomplished absolutely nothing from a story perspective by the time you reach the end.
Question here. What mission are you referring to? Because I cannot think of a single one that doesn't have you accomplishing something significant at the end of it. Besides maybe 343 Guilty Spark, but even then, that's the mission where the Flood gets revealed, so no shit, the in-game priorities are gonna change when that occurs.
The story guides the gameplay in many games, and if the story is a great big blur of nothing for the majority of the adventure, the immersion of the gameplay is much more likely to suffer as a result. If you personally don't care about the quality of the story as it pertains to a video game, then that's fine. But to act like story quality and gameplay quality are completely independent of one another and that a change in perception of one doesn't ever affect perception of the other is absurd.
Can that be the case? Sure. Is it always the case? Fuck no. I mean, look at the Doom games. All of them, besides maybe Doom 3, are really light when it comes to story, and yet they're often heralded as the pinnacle of the FPS genre. And while I will say that Halo CE is a couple notches above Doom in this regard, the narrative is nowhere near as much of a focal point as it would be in some of the future games like Halo 2 and 3.
Halo CE's story isn't simple in a "this is cool supporting material" type of way. It's simple in a "where's the rest of it" type of way. And when you have the player thinking, "where's the rest of it?" you have a serious problem you need to address. Excuse number 3. Getting lost is just part of the adventure.
I don't know if y'all can tell, but when I was watching this video for the first time, this was the moment that I decided I wanted to do a video on this. There is a lot to unpack here. I don't know what's worse. The fact that this brainlet somehow managed to get lost in Halo CE's levels, which are extremely fucking easy to navigate, or the fact that he genuinely thinks that there are some people that think it's a part of the Halo experience. Like, my guy, do you have a source for this one? Because I would love to make fun of the people making this argument. Although, let's be honest, I think we all know what a source is.
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
This excuse is normally brought up when people such as myself criticize Halo CE's level design for being boring and repetitive. I uploaded a video a while back that goes into greater detail regarding my issues with this game's level design, but for this video I'll keep it short and sweet. Getting lost in a video game can be an enjoyable experience, but that is dependent on one critical idea. The game has to give you the tools necessary to get unlost, and Halo CE does not do this.
No. Halo CE very much does that, given that 90% of the time, there are only 2 directions that you can go in. The way forward, and the way that you came. And I think most people are smart enough to use simple process of elimination to figure out where they need to go at any given time. I mean, hell, even in cases like the second half of Halo, or the first half of the Silent Cartographer, where the levels are a bit more open-ended, it makes it pretty obvious from simple exploration where it is you need to go. There are bright blue lights at all the entrances to all the crash sites in the second half of Halo that you need to visit. Meanwhile, the first half of the Silent Cartographer has 2 places you need to visit, and both of them are easy to spot if you're just the slightest bit attentive. Here's a little hint. There'll be a shit ton of enemies in front of each. The only time I could conceivably see somebody getting lost is the library, which is widely considered to be the worst level in the game and one of the worst levels in the entire series. Which even then, it wouldn't apply in your case because you're playing on the Anniversary graphics, and in the Anniversary version of the library, they added these bright blue arrows that tell you exactly where you need to go.
You don't have a map or a waypoint to use for reference to figure out where you are, unlike, wait for it, Ori and the Blind Forest.
You know, I think I figured out why this video was even made. This dude really just wanted to talk about Ori and the Blind Forest, but realized he wasn't gonna get any views unless he was shit-talking another game in the process. But back on topic, the level design from these two games are incomparable. Ori and the Blind Forest is a 2D Metroidvania game which focuses on exploration in a non-linear 2D environment. Halo Combat Evolved, on the other hand, is an arcade first-person shooter that focuses on combat specifically and makes all the levels extremely linear, and as a result, open-ended exploration is kept to a minimum.
I know I'm bringing up that game a lot, but that's only because I think it succeeds in so many places where Halo CE fails. In Ori, you are often thrust into non-linear areas and you're not clearly told where the path forward is, but you're given enough resources to figure it out for yourself. On top of the aforementioned map and waypoint systems, the world isn't so massive that you get overwhelmed with options. Even in the Misty Woods, the only area in that game in which the map is disabled, you still aren't getting lost all the time because the level design is intuitive enough such that you won't really consider going down paths that you aren't meant to. How does all this relate to Halo CE? Simple. You have exactly one method to find the correct way to go in Halo CE: trial and error. There is no other reliable method that you can use throughout the entirety of the playthrough. Why? Because everything looks the same, so you don't have the ability to use your observational skills to figure out where to go. You have to pick an option and hope it's the right one, and if it's not the right one, you have to pick another, lather, rinse, repeat until you luck out and find the right way.
You say this as if Halo CE has a whole bunch of branching paths and only one correct way forward, but that's not the case. There's almost always one path to go down unless you just turn around and start backtracking. Like for example, the level you're playing, the Truth and Reconciliation, the doors that you can go through have a green light in the middle, but the other ones that you can't go through are red. So unless your name is literally Blindbeard the Pirate, you really shouldn't be having an issue here. Again, the only exception is the library when playing on classic graphics, and it's one of the most criticized levels in all of Halo for that reason.
I'm not a huge fan of the idea of getting lost in a video game. I usually prefer to have a clear goal and clear destination in mind because that's just how I think. That said, I am willing to explore around within reason. But when there's no indication of which pathway is correct, excluding these big ass arrows on the ground which are totally not an indication of the fact that the developers knew players would never find their way around these areas without their hands being held the entire time, that's not an adventure.
Well, this is an enigma and a half. First you were complaining about getting lost in these levels, and now you're bitching about the fact that these arrows make it way too obvious of where you're supposed to go. I swear to God, this dude just seems to be completely unable to
keep that same energy.
That's just a chore that leads to you wandering around aimlessly doing nothing when you could have been progressing further into the game. In other words, dropping players into a level with little to no tools for survival and telling them to figure it out is bad level design. It's comparable to taking a person who grew up in a big city and throwing them into the forest without any wilderness training. That person would have basically no chance of surviving, and that's exactly what Halo CE is doing.
That's right, guys. Halo CE is the equivalent of throwing a child into the forest without a map because this brainlet doesn't know how to navigate a linear-ass level. I swear, you love to fucking see it. I mean, shit, when I've played this game's campaign for the first time back in 2018, I was able to navigate without any fucking issue whatsoever, so all I can say is...
skill issue.
So why people consider this to be a great decision that makes Halo CE amazing and worthy of heaps of praise is something I'll probably never be able to understand. On to excuse number 4, which is probably the dumbest one on this list. I like it because it's nostalgic.
Yeah, I really don't think I need to justify this one with a response, so I'm gonna go ahead and end the video off here because this is the last one that he talks about. So I guess the key takeaway here is if you're going to respond to people's points regarding something, then please show the fucking receipts for that. Oh, and also make sure you provide examples of what you're talking about, because for most of this video, this dude was just completely talking out of his ass. But anyways, that's gonna be it for this video. If you enjoyed, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe for more, and tell me what you think of this dude, and not being able to navigate these linear-ass levels in Halo CE. Anyways, that's it. Peace!